Now that we have successfully aligned or georeferenced our pipeline alignment sheet, the next step is to capture information from the sheet using digitization. And that's what I'm going to go over next. The first step in digitization is actually creating feature classes within a geodatabase to hold the information that we are going to digitize. What I'm going to ask you for this project is quite simple. We're going to digitize a line representing the pipeline center line and a bounding box that simply captures the extent of the information on the map. To do this, we first need to create two feature classes in a geodatabase, one for the linear features, the other for the polynomial features. I've already created a geodatabase, Labo4 digitization, to hold the results of what I'm going to digitize. So I need to add two feature classes. We do this simply by creating a new feature class, going under New, selecting Feature Class, and then we provide the appropriate information. So I'm going to create something that's called Pipeline, and this is going to be not a polygon, but it's going to be a polyline. I want the coordinate system to be NAD83. That's important to note. And I'm going to hit run and it's executing and it's going to create a polyline feature class. And this again is going to hold the pipeline. I also want to create one that's the bounding box. And we'll tell you what I mean about the bounding box in a minute, but this is going to be polygon. And again, we want the same coordinate system. And the reason I'm asking you to create a bounding box in part is to give you some little experience digitizing a polygon rather than a line. So now I have two feature classes to hold the information that I'm going to capture from my pipeline alignment sheet. And we're going to digitize the pipeline first. And I'm still a bit of a newbie at using ArcGIS Pro to digitize, so you'll notice some of my limitations. However, if you have gone through getting to know ArcGIS Pro, you should have learned some techniques for digitization already, and you might even be a much better digitizer than I am. Digitizing is one of those things, you do it for a few minutes, you think you've done enough. But sadly, sometimes you have to continue and continue and continue. So what we're going to do is we're going to start digitizing our pipeline. And notice I have in my contents, I have a pipeline in my bounding box. So what I'm going to do first is I want to zoom in a little bit on my pipeline just so I can know where I'm going to start. And we're going to go from northwest to southeast in our digitization, and we're going to stop there. So what we do to add features is we go to Edit, and then we can create features. And we can create either pipelines, or we can also create bounding boxes. So we're going to create, and we have two things we can create. We can create this feature, or we can create a pipeline. And whichever one you select is what is going to be created. So we're going to start and we're going to create a pipeline. And notice I have some more tools here. Now, one of the things that you'll find, or I found initially frustrating, was trying to learn how to pan and zoom once I start creating a line. And I have found that you can pan and zoom while you're creating features, at least on my mouse that has a little wheel button, by pushing down. So if I push my wheel down, I'm allowed to pan. I let it go. I can use my wheel to zoom in, and this will continue to work once I start creating my line. So I'm going to start creating my line. I hit create, and I very carefully put my first point down. And then I want to put down only as many points along the line as I need to represent it. More points do not do anything but add information. unnecessarily. So I use my left mouse button to put in what is called a vertice. And really what's most important to represent is when the pipeline changes direction. And now you can see, oh, gee whiz, I need to go this way. What do I do? Well, what I do is I hold down the mouse wheel, and then I can pan to where I want to put my next point. I let go of the mouse wheel, I left click the left button, and I can continue to do that. The key is being able to push down on that mouse wheel to be able to allow me to pan to place my points. So you can see that is what I'm doing. And notice I didn't put that point exactly where I probably should have. There's ways to go back and do a little bit of editing later on. We can actually move that vertice. I'll try to do that in a minute, just so I have my pipeline as well represented as I can. And one of the things you'll notice is when we have curvature along the line, I'm forced to put vertices at more frequent spacing spatially. And again, I probably didn't do a very good job there because I want one right there. But maybe we'll have to do a little editing to clean this up in the end. So we're almost there. And again, if I was doing this for part of a real job, I would probably do a better job than I'm doing now. But as a demonstration, it's probably not too bad. But again, you can think about the width of the line, right? So notice that one is not quite where it probably should be, but we might want to move it over. So part of the spatial uncertainty that I have in positioning the line is simply that width has some finite width in the real world. So I have some uncertainty in where that pipeline actually exists because of how it's represented on the map. That uncertainty could be important for what I'm doing. It may not be important for what I'm doing. It all depends on your application. Now, for some reason, a point has been put on this map, so it's probably important to capture that. So I made sure I put a point at the center there. And I'm just going to continue on. And again, if you're tired of watching me, you can always fast forward. And then I want to finish when I get here. That end. And once I'm done, I can right click and I can click finish, and now that line is completed. You can also click finish on that button down there as well. So now you noticed I said there might have been some vertices I didn't really like. Oops, I just put another one in, so I can actually hit escape or hit cancel. So notice I've now clicked the vertices tool, and what this allows me to do is to zoom in. If I can zoom correctly, and I might say I don't like that vertice where that position is. I can move it. And again, this is part of the editing process that you want to make sure you have your line as you intended. So perhaps I don't like that vertice. I want to move it a little bit. You have the ability to reshape your line and do edits. There's a vertice I probably don't like very much at all. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to move that one kind of more a little down to the center. So again, you have the ability to do editing as you feel is necessary. And then I can hit apply changes. So now I have managed to add my pipeline. And the most important thing to do is eventually you want to save those changes. I'm going to save all the edits. And one thing you should know about editing is if you don't mind redoing 30 minutes of work, then don't save for 30 minutes. If you don't like to redo 30 minutes of work, then you might want to think about saving more often. So pretty easy to create a linear feature. So the other thing I want you to create is I want you to create just the bounding box of the area that is represented on this alignment sheet. That might be useful for something for the purposes of a class exercise. It gives you some experience creating a new feature. So I'm going to hit create, and now I don't want to create a pipeline, but I want to create a bounding box. So I'm going to click on the bounding box tool, and notice a new set of tools have appeared. I can create a rectangle, I can create various things, but I'm going to create my typical polygon. And again, I'm using the mouse wheel to get it to the position where I want to start, and then I simply hit my left button, and I can zoom in and zoom out and pan by pushing down that middle mouse wheel. And again, for the purposes of this, if I can get by with only a single position, a single point, I want to do that. Because if I put a point in between those two, the chances are I'm not going to make it perfectly square. And you'll notice that it kind of decides to partially draw the polygon while you're doing it. And so, you can scroll out, you can do different things to get it to where you need to be at the end. So now if I put this in a very good thing, voila, I can go down here, I can hit finish, and I should have created now a bounding box that has encompassed my pipeline. And again, oops, for some reason it moved. I hit save, and now I've saved all my edits, and I've completed the digitization of the information from this alignment sheet. For the purposes of this introductory digitization lab, we've captured all the information we really need to from this simple alignment sheet. I will refer you to a video from last year's Petroleum GIS conference that describes more advanced digitizing of a pipeline alignment sheet and what you can do with that information in a linear referencing system. Now, these topics are beyond the scope of 660, but will be covered in more detail later in the program.